Good evening, everyone. My name is Louis Polito with the Belmar Public Library. Welcome to us coming tonight to Author Time with author Mick Bennett over here, as he's here to tell us about his latest book, Take the Lively Air. Mick is a native Belmar author who taught for high school English and coached basketball for over 33 years in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And he has written 2 other books, the Belmar series and Beat the Blues, which we have some standing right over here. And he's here to tell us about his latest book, Take the Lively Air, set right here in Belmar. So, Mick, welcome, and tell us what you got.
Thank you, Louis.
You're welcome.
I'll tell you a little bit about myself first, and bore those 2 people, maybe entertain you 2 ladies. I grew up in Belmar. My parents lived on 13th Avenue. The house is still there. There's a little anchor over the front door. I think it's on 13th and D.
I live on 13th.
Oh, wow. Well, do you know the house?
I live on 13th between Ocean and A.
Okay.
And that was on E?
I'm not sure. I haven't been there in years. As a matter of fact, not since I worked for the borough, and that was decades ago. But yeah, it's still there as far as I know. It's got a little anchor over the front door.
I'll have to look.
Gable. Anchor on the gable. Thank you. Carpenter. Retired. My parents lived there, and then I came around in 1952, and my dad bought a house on Inlet Terrace. Dr. McGrath had lived there and had a practice there, and he had been deceased, I believe, for a number of years. And so he, if you know anything about housing prices, this might sound kind of strange. He bought that house on the terrace for $12,000 in 1952. Wow. And when he sold it, when my mom and dad sold it in 1978, my dad had cancer, and they were going to go out to a Shadow Lake, I believe it's called, in Red Bank. And they sold the house, and I remember the realtor told them that there hasn't been a house on the terrace that's ever sold for 6 figures. So they sold it for $98,000 in 1978. I don't know what it's worth now, but I would guess quite a bit more than $98,000. I left Belmar because I went to college in Gettysburg, got a teaching job right out of there, and I kind of settled in, and I stayed there because of that woman over there. We were married 40 years in June, and Gettysburg's okay. It's a tourist town without the ocean. I like the beach better, but I played Little League ball. I remember the parades, riding on the fire engines out to the field on Marconi Road. The last time I was here 5 years ago for Beat the Blues, Mayor McGovern introduced me. We went to Mrs. Cubbins' kindergarten together, and actually my dad also had Mrs. Cubbins as a teacher for kindergarten. He went to Asbury Park High School. My mom went to Asbury Park too. My dad was, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this, he was the captain of the state championship football team, 1931, Asbury Park High School. So that's a little bit about me. As Louis said, I taught for 33 years in the same school. I met my wife during my teaching years. And I really never wrote any novels until I retired. I did write one. I didn't have the time, basically, when I taught, and plus we had kids, and I stuck to short stories, but I always wanted to write novels. My first novel, the first part of the trilogy, was published in... Hi, guys.
How are you?
Glad you could make it. Was published in 2014, and the subsequent parts of that were published in 2015 and 16. Beat the Blues came out in 2018. This guy was done in just before COVID, but COVID put a kibosh on the publishing business like it put a kibosh on everything else. So this one stuck around for 2 years before it got the okay to get published. It was supposed to be published back in May. I was going to come here for a presentation then. Unfortunately, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer in January of this year. So I had a little radiation fun and hormonal treatments and stuff like that that kind of put that one on the kibosh again for a few more months. And Lewis was good enough and came through for me for this date today. So I got to get a big thank you to Lewis. And you, by the way, are getting one of the door prizes.
No.
There are door prizes. There are markers under the seats. And if you're not sitting in one seat, if you're close to it, you'll get a door prize. They're mugs. They're coffee mugs. I was going to tell you a little bit about the novel, and then I was going to read first chapter. I have a quote here from, actually I just saw this quote. It's not from one of his songs, from the guy who plays that big guitar out there where all the tourists get their pictures taken. Bruce Springsteen said, I think I saw it on one of his music Facebook things. But basically he said, somebody who can reckon with the past, who can live in the past, in the present, and move towards the future, that's fabulous. And I thought, well, that fits my book exactly. My book is about overcoming regret, dealing with regret, facing regret, and overcoming it, not letting your past ghosts haunt you into the present, or at least dealing with them so that you can move into the future. There are three basic main characters, protagonists. I don't like to use literary stuff because I don't, know who's familiar with literary terms. So the main characters, there are other characters, but the three main characters are a college professor, about 50, a lady who's divorced and whose son has recurring drug problems, especially oxycodone, things like that. And he's 30 and he has a 12-year-old son. So it's Riley Walker, who is the college professor, Molly Sullivan, who lives right here in Belmar, and her grandson, whom she adopts, Clyde. Clyde is 12 years old. He's the child of an abusive father who, as I said, is in and out of drug rehab. And Molly, being a good mother, can't let go of his hopeful getting himself set. But at the same time, she realizes that he's not exactly a reputable, responsible human. So she officially adopts Clyde, her grandson. And so she is starting out on a very new and adventuresome, I would think, road with Clyde. Clyde's a 12-year-old, as I said. He's into surfing, he's into skateboarding, he's into everything California. And then he comes here where the beaches are flat and there are no rocks and there's no skate parks. and there's no Monterey Bay otters where he lived in California, and it's all new to him. He plays Little League Baseball. He tries to get along with the local kids, but he's literally a fish out of water. They don't cotton to him, the local kids. So he's undergoing that stress, and Riley, I guess the main protagonist, he has a problem with his history, especially with his former wife, who is now deceased. She died 13 years ago, and I can't tell you anything more without spoiling stuff. But that's basically the setup of the book. It takes place in 24 hours. I was pretty impressed that I was able to write a 70,000-word novel that takes place over 24 hours. James Joyce did it with Ulysses, but I'm not James Joyce. This is not Ulysses. The writing is of course, much more up to date. It's easy to follow, I think. My wife's the only person here who's read it, but she said it's the easiest one that I've written so far. So, and she doesn't lie. One of the reasons I married her, she doesn't lie. And I'll read you a couple of blurbs. Blurbs are on the back of books. Basically what you do is you contact your fellow author who you've done a favor for and say, I need a favor from you now. Could you write me a blurb? Blurbs are short little reviews, I guess, basically. They don't say everything that the writers think, hopefully. And hopefully they just write positive stuff. But this one is really good. I'll read you this one from a writer named Megan Lucas. Megan wrote an award-winning novel a couple of years ago called Songbirds and Stray Dogs. She's the editor-in-chief of a literary magazine called The Wreck and Review, and she just published a collection of short stories, Here in the Dark, which is getting really good reviews. She's not a writer you'd be familiar with. This is a small press, a small indie press. You guys probably know, but if you don't, I'll tell you, there are 5 major publishers. The 5 big publishers publish just about every book that you can imagine. Children's books, novels, what's that guy's, Patterson, a guy who advertises on TV. Knopf, literary, mystery, everything. There are only 5 major companies. To approach publication by those companies, you have to have an agent. And the agent has to look at something that you've written that's saleable. They're not going to take you as a client unless you have something that can sell. So it's kind of like, I like to compare it to The Voice. If you win The Voice, the song show on TV, if you win The Voice, you'll be famous and make lots of money. If you're on The Voice and you have a wonderful voice and you don't win, you're back at Louis' Bar and Grill on the corner, for Friday and Saturday matinees. And that's, the way that works. Well, I'm at Louis' Bar and Grill, except it's called a small independent press. It's called Unsolicited Press. It's in Portland, Oregon, and it's owned and run by women, which is great. Here's the little blurb. Take the lively air as a thoughtful and realistic portrait of modern families. Bennett is unafraid to take on tough and touchy subjects with empathy and honesty, with prose as vibrant as its New Jersey beach setting. The shimmering tension will have readers flipping pages. More than a family drama, it's an examination of the complexities of excavating buried grief and regret, and a map for how to move forward. That, to me, hi Tom, good to see you, bud. That to me was a very accurate summation of the book. It's not just dealing with grief, it's a map for how to overcome it and to prevail. in the end. Live your life and take the lively air. If you don't know who Theodore Retke was, he was a poet, popular in the 50s and 60s, basically. But he wrote a poem called The Waking, and the title is taken from a stanza of his poem. Great nature has another thing to do to you and me, so take the lively air, and lovely, learn by going where to go. Do you guys have any questions before I start reading? Okay. Well, here we go. Off you go. Is the light on in the camera?
Yeah, it's going.
Chapter 1. Riley Walker sat alone in the middle of a boardwalk bench, shaking his head. Completing his third decade of teaching called for a celebration. Staring at the horizon didn't qualify. Wringing his hands, he could hear the Friday evening beachfront parade passing by behind him. Walkers sharing secrets, joggers puffing, their running shoes thumping the boards, and car stereos blaring top-down dreams along Ocean Avenue. As the sun took its daily bow, flip-flops in hand, he walked down the beach and stood on the cool sand below the tide rise. Gulls patrolled the shoreline. A one-legged bird lighted yards away from others strutting up and down, following the foam. They pecked and scurried from each breaker like skirmishers before a superior force. He stood in the wash. Numbing May water pricked his feet. In the black distance, lightning bolts boxed above the horizon. Thunder accompanied the breakers. Their sound eased memories. He moved onto the smooth, high-tide sand and sat cross-legged, massaging his toes until sensation returned. For fun, he scooped sand into a mound and moved around on his hands and knees. He squared the mound and dug a courtyard, walls formed smooth by a flip-flop. When walls collapsed, he built it up again. He found decorations along the tide line. Mussel shells stuck in halfway served as battlements, bits of straw flagpoles. A silly distraction on an empty beach void of shadows, teeming with ghosts. By the time he leaned back on his elbows across from this creation, he could barely make it out in the dark. High tide would come about midnight. The castle and semester would disappear together. No more final grades to exam, no more final exams to grade, no more grades to file. Tonight, all he had to do was sleep. He'd take a night's sleep as a good omen. He'd take a few restful hours any way he could. Curled in fetal position, his pillow somewhere, Riley peeled off sweaty covers and rubbed his eyes. Mornings usually meant relief. Today held promise. Sludge rattling in his throat, he rumbled it clear, swung legs around, and sat up. He wrung his hands as his toes touched the floor. It had rained hard during the night, but now sunlight slashed across the floor through worn window blinds. Summer break would start with an AM cruise. Shaving and showering, he thought about where he'd drive after a quick stop at Molly's. He put on his cargo shorts and favorite Yankee t-shirt. Outside, morning sun glittered off Stella, his 2010 firecracker red Jeep Wrangler. He climbed in and unwound himself. He bought her a few years back. She didn't have all-wheel drive, and the previous owner speckled the cloth seats when he spilled bleach, but nothing beat going doorless and topless on a warm May morning. Bear for air, he crowed. Now to Molly's cheerleader smile and coach disposition. 50-ish and fit, she could transform routine happenings into flashy parades. She liked to joke she and Riley were the same height as Abraham and Mary Todd Lincoln. Before Molly, he strolled through the academic year without ever focusing on matters more than an hour away. Encroaching age, possible ill health, or lack of retirement security never crossed his mind streets at 3 a.m. Too much spectral traffic. He couldn't get stoned on Saturdays without thinking about what she'd ask him to do. She called it needling, he called it coaching, and found himself fishing for it. They'd been close since St. Patty's, but agreed not to cohabitate except in case of fire or flood. They enjoyed being alone together, even in crowds. She met him at her kitchen door and jumped down his throat like a tongue depressor. Your hair tells me you've been riding around. I hope you aren't drinking a 4-pack of Guinness for breakfast. Most men my age can't do this, he grabbed a handful of shaggy salt and pepper hair. As for my passenger, my semester break begins a transition period during which I'll seek out my anarchist roots and rejoin the poetic half of my soul. She put 2 bowls on the table, homemade yogurt and granola. When I toss wild declarations at you as if they're fresh fish, at least clap your flippers. It's Saturday night, our date night, and you won't be good company if you drink on an empty stomach at 8 a.m. Don't forget Clyde's joining us. I'll be fine. I won't spoil your Italian feast. You have your gravy started. You call it gravy. To me, it's spaghetti sauce. Ambrosia by any name. He sat. Clyde sleeping late? He has baseball this morning. Not sure what time. She poured him a cup of coffee and sat with him. He lifted her head and smiled when he covered her hand with his. How's he doing? Okay, trying to fit in. The jigsaw analogy. He twirled a spoon, but the tablecloth wouldn't let it spin. I wish I was tucked in the middle of a 500-piece puzzle. Well, you have a few months to relax. Please stop with the spoon. He stuck the spoon in the yogurt. I might be done, Molly. I mean, with teaching. Whoa, where'd that come from? I thought I'd find an important part of myself still kicking when I started at Brookdale Community College. As English department head, I'd have a say. I'd be a mover and shaker. He swiveled in his seat. Horse spit. I'm required. Might as well be water. I'm not serving self-pity this morning. You help your students. Molly patted his hand. Don't talk yourself out of your happiness. I can't see any good happening anymore. I'm not talking about here at 202 Monmouth Avenue. He wagged a finger at the floor. The world's a parking lot crammed with drivers who refuse to use turn signals, and stupidity's catching. Molly moved the yogurt and granola closer to him. He jiggled the yogurt bowl. The stuff didn't move. You didn't drink that 4-Packs Twin for breakfast, did you? She asked. Speaking of coitus, Walter Lansdale, a close colleague, regularly has affairs with adult students. I reject such opportunities. Before you and I met, the last decade of my sex life had been as colorless as a whiteboard. She shook her head and stood. Stirring her sauce, she turned to him. I'm sorry your job has you down, but you're done with it for a while. My pasta dough's ready. She smacked the white blob atop her floured, sprinkled counter. I need to get rolling. I encourage second-class adults and teach 20-something skills they missed in sex ed. Oh, I doubt that. She smiled and shook her head. Such as, my younger students are keenly aware of social, political, and financial realities, but they know nothing of foresight and foreplay. They don't carry condoms. Molly turned. Girls or boys? Why would girls? I rest my case. He escaped Molly's yogurtless. To cruise on a peaceful morning. The sun stretched shadows and shimmered off an empty ocean and a bare beach. But vehicles were arriving. They'd park in the diagonal spaces along the boards to unload beach chairs, umbrellas, Tommy Bahama buggies, child carriers, and Yeti coolers. Tourist-toted beach sundries would clog crosswalks in Amazon Prime parades. Whoops! 2 women pushed baby strollers across Pine Avenue, and a pickup revved its engine and froze them in the street center. Riley gave the truck a voice. Watch out, witches, I'm in town and my tourist dollars trump your infants. He cracked open a Guinness and dumped it into his mug. Tan foam bubbled over. He slurped, finished pouring, and crushed the can, all while sitting on his unfastened seatbelt. He didn't feel like getting strapped in. Cruising down Ocean Avenue with only a couple of weeks until Memorial Day, damn, he could have lit a cigarette if he still smoked. Back home, he thought about firing up a nice bud. Not all of it. He wanted to save a taste for tonight. But he figured Molly would smell weed on his clothes. On his overstuffed bedroom corner chair, he uncovered an old sweatshirt with cut-off sleeves underneath his sweatpants and shorts. In the summer, his chair served as a closet. Clothes he wore frequently sat on it or hung over its back. Soon it would change colors from school drab to summer bright. Pop-Tart in hand, unfrosted cinnamon went best with Guinness. He climbed back into Stella and took off toward Spring Lake. A nice drive through town, all decked out in Mother's Day hanging baskets. Back on Ocean Avenue, he found an empty spot along the boards to pour Guinness number 2. He instinctively checked over his shoulder and imagined an Asbury Park Press story. A Brookside Community College professor was arrested Saturday morning for possessing an open container of alcohol in his vehicle. Nah, too boring. Prof's pouring pisses off police. Hello, ma'am. A woman with tan arms and legs sauntered past and gave him, his Guinness, or Beethoven a thumbs up. The can sat in plain sight with Stella bare for air, but on Ocean Avenue, cops were easy to spot. Why get older if you couldn't be immature? He cruised from the inlet bridge to the big Spring Lake gates up and down. By his last trip, he had waivers on the boards who recognized Stella. He switched CDs from Beethoven. Ode to Joy had turned a boardwalk jogger's head to Bach. Helen loved Bach. His gut burned like grill grates. Guinness didn't douse stomach acid. Another charming facet of aging, spontaneous heartburn. He could head uptown for some Tums. Better put a sippy top on his mug. Sorry, no problem. He could head uptown for some Tums. Better put a sippy top on his mug. He could joke this ain't an open container. He never made it uptown. Morning Bach and beer buzz jump-started his emotions as a nostalgic hobgoblin commandeered Stella. She turned right, gunned one block down, and came to a dead stop alongside what used to be Old Lady Murphy's rooming house. He couldn't remember the last time he'd driven past it. Now a cozy B&B, 102 Surf Avenue was a white three-story Victorian where he'd taken a room for a summer 2 lifetimes ago. It sat on a corner along one-way streets. He eyed its postage stamp side yard. The old fence had been torn down. Faded blue shutters waiting to be painted leaned against the building, and a lawnmower sat in the middle of the overgrown grass. Jesu, joy of man's desiring, filled him. Gazing, memory searching, Stella and thoughts idling. A black pickup's horn jarred Riley back to the intersection, sporting a bright yellow Cansden flag license plate. The truck had stopped at the corner. Gadsden flag license plate, sorry. The truck had stopped at the corner heading south on Surf. Stella faced west on Fisher. Riley caught the driver's eyes under a cap cocked at a jaunty angle. The driver stared him down, fat fingers opening and closing around the top of his steering wheel. The driver drifted his truck forward ever so slightly, an interloper looking for an intersection nuptials. The driver lifted one hand off his steering wheel, pointed a curled forefinger at Riley, and wiggled for him to go. Then 4 fingers waggled back and forth. He kept at it. They weren't traffic cop cool. His arm and the shoulder never moved. They weren't spread apart, slow old lady fingers. They insisted. No, demanded. A regular freaking traffic Moses, waving fingers instead of a staff. Proceed. Riley's mind lost ground to his heart as long morning light poured down the blacktop, wet with last night's rain. As Bach's strings rose, he remembered hearing Helen's cries that night 13 years ago, the car's high beams gleaming off the road, glaring slick with black ice as the car swerved toward the phone pole, a magnet pulling the car, spinning it sideways until metal and glass and wood all screamed at once. That's chapter 1. Anybody have any questions?
Questions. I guess, what led you to explore regret? It's a pretty heavy topic.
Grief and regret. 5 years ago, I believe it was August, when I was here for Beat the Blues. My dearest friend in Gettysburg was 3 months away from death from prostate cancer. They caught mine early. They didn't catch his early. My best and oldest friend was living on Surf Avenue, which is why I put Surf Avenue in there. The rest of the avenues are disguised. I didn't want to trust my memory too well. You know, someone would come back and say, Reggie's wasn't on 9th, it was on this, you know. But my best friend was clearly dying of alcoholism, and he passed 3 years ago. And I, at this point in my life, I thought I was done with regret. I'd lost my parents long ago. Lost my dad in '78, lost my mom in 2002. And it just hit me again that at this point in life, I was still dealing with regret from not just recently, but from the past. And I write to learn more about things that I thought I knew about. And regret and grief, maybe I needed to learn a little bit more.
Do you feel like you did?
I think so. I think so. You've probably guessed, and actually you don't have to guess because one of the blurbs says, crafted with just the right details, understated humor, and empathy. Empathy, to me, is a big element in the book. Out of a single incident, 2 headstrong men colliding their cars in a seaside New Jersey town emerges a universe of multi-layered characters and interconnected truths. You don't have to guess because I just told you that the truck and the Jeep, bang. That starts the action in the novel. That starts the conflict between Riley and Molly and Clyde and this other family that's here to go fishing. They're from Pennsylvania. And they're, I don't get into politics too deeply, but you can tell by the Gadsden license plate that they're not exactly liberal. And the characters from Belmar are a little bit more liberal. But that's not the focus of the book. The focus of the book is the interconnection between those 2 families. And the thing about the accident is it snowballs. It's a minor accident. They're both at stop signs and they kind of run into each other purposely. But from that small accident, things develop. Health problems happen and things get kind of dicey.
It's really unusual to try and structure a story around the 24-hour period.
Yeah, I don't know how I did it, to tell you the truth.
What
It
led you to even consider that?
well, I don't know.
Like delirium?
I'm what they call a pantser. I write by the seat of my pants. I don't have outlines. I don't have an ending in mind when I start. And the day just continued. And by the time I got to the end of the day, the book was over. I can't explain it any other way.
You did not intend, when you started the book, you did not intend to frame it within one day.
No.
Wow.
No, but it turned out really well that way because I like endings where the reader can judge for themselves which character was, not quite right, which character was the favorite. There's the accident. Oh, I'll give this away. The accident is Riley's fault. Riley plows into that truck. He not only plows into it, he continues after his airbag goes down to push the truck across the intersection, and its curb on the other side stops it. Unfortunately, Riley's the one who gets injured more seriously because without his airbag, his head bangs into the windshield, whatever part of that car is called, the windshield frame. I don't know. He's the one who splits his head open. But he has to deal with that. And the other characters get a little angry, especially one who's very angry, very antagonistic. Not a nice guy.
I'm the only person in the room that's read the book.
That's my wife, by the way. In case you missed it.
But
She's prejudiced.
I am. But not when it comes to this, 'cause I'll tell you just how it is. But I think the fact that it takes place in that one 24-hour period makes the reading go so quickly.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't put it down after I got it.
What I do is there are chapters from 6 different points of view. And at the beginning of each chapter, the character whose point of view that chapter is in, his or her name is in the first line of the chapter. So it's really easy to follow. That was good advice from my editor, because I had a couple of chapters that I didn't mention that until the page or two on, and she said, no, you have to put that name in the first line because they're going to get really confused.
Figure out a little bit.
Oh yeah, well, I wrote 3 novels that went nowhere before I wrote one that was ever accepted. So, and that was after 180 rejections. So.
How long did this take you to write?
It took me about 6 months to write, and then it took another, close to a year to rewrite. Rewriting for me is much, I don't write very fast. If I write 1,000 words a day, that's a lot. I've seen guys at book cons type up 2,000-3,000 words while people are around them drinking beer and buying books from other, outlets. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they write that much in one sitting.
So how did you go about your character development? Like, say, these characters you have, what drove you to bring about 2 strong-minded individuals clashing to generate that conflict?
Well, I wanted 2 strong-willed individuals fighting over something that was absurd, because they're basically fighting over a parking space, which anyone who lives in Belmar, I'm sure, has experienced. I had my character set. The type of books I write sometimes they're called literary fiction, but basically they're character-centered. Character is more important than plot. They're character-driven. The characters drive the plot rather than in genre fiction, for instance, a mystery. You got to have the plot, and then the characters fit into the plot. I don't do that. My plot fits in with my characters. If my character's got a bad temper, he's just likely to do something bad. It's like Flannery O'Connor wrote a story once where she started it out and then she knew, I can't remember the name of the story, but there's a character with a wooden leg. I don't know if you're familiar with Flannery O'Connor. She was very Catholic, very religious, very moral in her fiction. And she knew halfway through the story that one of her characters was going to steal that wooden leg. It just came to her because the guy was not a nice person.
When you write these antagonistic characters, is that sometimes more fun than writing characters you agree with a little more, or do you end up kind of annoying yourself, like kind of getting it out of your system?
Well, none of my protagonists are really good people. Right. Molly is very good. Molly, the mom, is very good. Clyde is a 12-year-old who, his father was a drug addict, and he sneaks some beers and goes out on beach trips and when he's supposed to be grounded and things like that, like a normal 12-year-old. But he's a sweet kid. Riley has bad temper. And the other characters are sweet. But there's one real bad guy that, he was fun to write. Yeah. I mean, he's just I won't use the word, but it rhymes with trick.
Right.
So when you developed the plot line for the story, did you kind of like have to game him out a little bit? Joe does X, and as a result, John does Y, and back and forth, and see how that progresses down, and that's how you mapped out the plot line?
Yeah, that's how things happen.
Yeah.
That's how things happen. I mean, for instance, when I was a lifeguard at Lock Harbor Beach years ago, every Sunday after work, we would go to one of the bars in Asbury Park, the Wonder Bar. It's about the only one that's still in existence. And you never knew what was going to happen at those places. But knowing who was with you, you could anticipate one of the characters doing something like turning a girl upside down and, you know, just this guy's going to do something bizarre, and I'm going to watch him because I'm a watcher. I'm not a doer when it comes to that kind of stuff. So your characters just kind of guide you through. And as I say, the character one at a time viewpoint. I hadn't done that before. It was fun. It was more interesting, I think.
How typical is the first chapter to the rest of the book?
Very typical. They're all short. They're all quick. It's chronological. I mean, you go from the intersection, and you didn't find out about the accident yet. But for instance, Molly's chapter is chapter 2, and Molly's making her pasta, as you remember, after Riley left. Up to her wrists in flour while rolling out pasta dough, Molly spun around and called Jamie's name when the first aid siren exploded. There's the accident. She'd meant to say Clyde, another one of her moments. She shook her head and wrung her hands in her apron. It wasn't the first time she'd confused the two. Her son Jamie, Clyde's daddy, was in her 3rd week of residency at Coventry Treatment Facility in Salinas, California. So one chapter follows pretty logically into another. It's just that the viewpoint changes.
So
one of the characters more challenging for you than another?
Yeah, I think some of the minor characters were a little challenging. The ones from Pennsylvania. I wasn't sure that they were going to come. I didn't want them to be stereotypes. I mean, if I really know a character well, I don't worry about that. And I don't worry about being sentimental, although some people thought it was sentimental. Did you think it was sentimental? I don't know. My reviews so far have been pretty good. But as far as your question goes, yeah, sometimes you feel uncomfortable a little bit with one of the characters, but there's a way you can fix that. You can just not write about them the next chapter. I mean, if a character bores you, you know, you just shove her into the background or him into the background a little bit. I guess the characters take over. If you like writing about them, you're going to write about them more. But then you also have to think of the reader. You have to think of the reader. You can't always sit there and amuse yourself because the reader's not going to be as amused as you are.
is there a lot of self-introspection among the characters? Because it seems 24-hour to get from conflict to de-escalation to final
There are
resolution.
a lot of flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
The flashback at the end with Riley and the accident with Helen, if you didn't catch Helen's name, Helen is his ex-wife, died in a crash 13 years ago. This, by the way, takes place in 2019. Did I say that? No. Yeah. Pre-COVID. COVID, what a mess. I didn't want to write about COVID because I knew every writer on the face of the earth would write something taking place during COVID. Luckily, I started it before COVID. And I didn't have to worry about that. But I was going to say about the reviews. The reviews have been pretty good. This book here, Beat the Blues, have you heard of Kirkus Reviews? Mm-hmm. Kirkus Reviews is a great big thing. This book got a Kirkus Review award. They put it in the Kirkus Best Magazine of October 2018. And this one, they hated it. But everyone who's read it has liked it, and this one didn't sell well anyway, despite the Kirkus review. So, Kirkus. You hear that, Kirkus? You're not getting my $400 again, pal.
How do you
400.
feel about Yelp?
Yeah,
Yelp? Does Yelp do books?
no, that's how they feel about
Relating
it.
to our industry.
I got you. These lovely people, by the way, own the Inn at the Shore at 4th Avenue and B, which is the model for the bed and breakfast in the book, even though it's on Surf Avenue. So you have to take the Inn at the Shore and put it down on Surf Avenue.
You were thinking of the inn when you wrote that B&B?
Yes,
I'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
you're welcome. You're welcome. Specifically, you're
It's okay, I'm just flattering, you know? It's nuts.
the previous owners, I'm sure you'll remember, had cherubs all through the house. The owner in the book is a widow, a dowager whose husband was killed at Anzio during World War II, and she has Mother Marys all through the house to keep an eye out for female visitors from her all male renters. See, I have some moral stuff going here. You go.
I was listening back
Oh, well, thank you.
there. Sounds great.
Thanks.
So what would you say your biggest difference in this book from your previous books? Have you brought something new to it, to your writing?
I think just the format of it, the change of pace with the characters narrating, one chapter at a time. The 24-hour constraint was a big change. This one takes place over 20 years. The Belmar series takes place over a summer. So that's different. But I think the big key is empathy again. The characters have empathy for one another. Both families have empathy for one another eventually. And even though they're different political, philosophical, religious, backgrounds, I'll go back to Megan's line. It's an examination of the complexities of excavating buried grief and regret and a map for how to move forward. I think I moved forward with this book. Maybe I just got lucky. I don't know. But I think the biggest difference is that I instill empathy in most of the characters, except for the bad guy. He has no empathy at all for anything.
Oh, he stays bad throughout this thing.
Oh, yeah. He gets worse. Oh, as it goes on. He gets violent. I don't know if you know the plays of Anton Chekhov, but Chekhov had a saying that if you show a gun in Act 1, you better use it by Act 3. No, there's a firearm pretty early in the book.
When did you finish this book?
It was right around COVID, when COVID started. It's hard to remember when I finished writing it, when I finished rewriting it. The publisher accepted it in 2020. And by the time I got it rewritten, which takes for me longer than writing, I would think
They made you rewrite it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ernest Hemingway was right when he said every first draft is the word that rhymes with writ, as in a writ for being arrested or something. Yeah, every first draft is crap. Yeah. Oh, I rewrite. Absolutely. I think I rewrote the last chapter and the ending and the beginning. They're the most important parts. 20, 25, 30 times. Easy.
And then when did it finally get published? Do you have the?
Oh, it got published 2 weeks ago.
Oh, fast, that's it.
Yeah, I explained to them.
I'm late.
Yeah, I know, Tom.
Right.
And you'll see the principal afterwards. I really appreciate you coming. The COVID put a kibosh on the publishing. They had to wait 2 years to publish it after it got all finalized. So that was a long 2 years to wait.
Mike, was it a conscious decision to get into the emotional intensity that this book is compared to your other books?
Yes.
Did you do it conscious?
Yeah, I think so. I think I kind of skirted some intensity in the previous books.
Well, their subject matter is that way. It's light. It's cursory.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, in life at the beach and some.
Yeah, the Belmar series is kind of like that. I mean, the trilogy. It's a little lighter, you know. Well, you read it.
That sounds like a, kind of a dive into it.
Yeah, I mean, this book could have taken place in any town. Obviously, the Belmar series couldn't have. And Beat the Blues could have probably taken place in different towns. But I just picked Belmar as a setting. I don't know if you ever heard of William H. Goss, Gaas, tremendous thinker, writer. I'd met him once, and he said, make your characters fictional, not autobiographical, and make your setting real. Pick a setting, pick a real setting. I mean, Faulkner, Yucatawba County in Mississippi, and Hemingway's got the marlin and the fish and the Key West and the this, that, the other thing, and the bulls and the bad female characters, in my opinion. Who am I to criticize Ernest Hemingway? He's one of my favorite writers. So,
Do you have any sense where your writing will evolve from here?
I do not. I've been writing a lot of flash fiction. I don't know if you know what flash fiction is. It's short stories, fewer than 1,000 words. Sometimes the limit's 500 words. I've been writing a lot of flash fiction lately. I've been really lucky. I've had 7 stories accepted in the last couple of years, and I'm probably going to try to get a collection of my short stories published. I have 14 that have been published, and I have a couple more that haven't been published, been rejected 50 times, but I like them, so I'm going to send them to the damn editor anyway, and if they don't like the one story, they can take it out. I mean, at this point in life, I'm not...
Are those flash pieces accessible on your website?
Yes, they are, and everyone gets a card. Please take a card. You can go to mickbennettnj.com and read my flash fiction. They're quicker than People magazine articles. Quicker than a visit to the bathroom.
How do you like or find dealing with these indie publishers now? Once you've gone through the process of writing and everything, and now you're going through the process of getting it out there.
I love my publisher. I mean, I sent my books to agents, and I had 3 take a look at the manuscript, and nope, thanks, not quite right for us. But again, I'm 70 years old, and I don't have any illusions of becoming an overnight hit. I don't know what that is anyway with writers. I just as soon not coming overnight hit, to tell you the truth, because I taught for 33 years in a small rural area, and every time I went to the movies, I'd see a kid that I taught 10 years ago. Hey, Mr. Bennett. Hey, Mr. Bennett. Is that you, Mr. Bennett? I really don't think I can take, at this point in my life, people running after me and, can I have your autograph? Can I have your autograph?
Perks of fame.
Yeah.
No movie deals right now, right?
If somebody gave me a movie deal, I'd take it. I mean, absolutely.
How many copies do you think you'll sell?
How many copies am I going to sell? I have no idea, Tom.
What's a guess? What do you want?
Oh, I'd love to sell like 500 copies. That would be great, but I can't tell how many I sell because when I get my royalty payments, I can never tell whether the payments for a ebook, which costs usually $2.98, maybe $3.98 at the most, and I get a percentage of that, or if it was a paperback and I get a percentage of that. So, but I just get a lump sum. So it could be 5 ebooks and I get, $8.
You sell them on Amazon or whatever.
Amazon, Barnes & Noble,
Wherever.
everywhere. Yeah, the book's available everywhere. And speaking of Amazon, I undersell. I don't charge what Amazon charges.
Amazon Prime Parade. That was a great line.
I hate Amazon. Every small publisher and every writer who works with a small publisher hates Amazon. The man just, he has enough. He has enough. What can you do with that much money? I don't know.
Anybody else have any questions? No?
Is the book for sale tonight?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, all 3. Take the Lively Air is definitely for sale. And before...
Don't you want to sit here? Don't you want to sit?
No. Her purse, her pocket
Purse counts.
I have some door prizes. And there's stickers
Don't
that
you want to move to the front row?
she's closer than Tom is to the chair. This, I have never done this before, but it looked like when I got my business cards done, they went, oh, do you want your book cover on anything else? So I got some mugs made.
Ooh.
So, where are the stickers? Don't laugh, you're not getting one.
You're not getting one.
You're not getting one.
You are.
Here's one for you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You.
Here's one for you. The sticker under the chair.
Yeah.
Where are the others? Okay, I think there's one here.
No, it's one,
Is there one there?
there's one next to it.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, there's a sticker there.
Okay.
Hey, you were sitting right there.
Wow.
So you're closest.
This one?
You're closest. Where are the others?
Third chair.
This one?
Yeah.
Well, you can't get 2.
Who designed the cover? We didn't ask you that.
Oh, that's the book cover.
I know, but who?
Oh, who designed it or who's on it?
Who designed it?
It's the new one. It was designed by the artist at my publishers. I told her what was in the book. I told her to read the whole book, but she didn't have time. So I just explained it to her, and it's at the ocean, obviously. And unfortunately, the guy, the ghost-like figure, because there's a lot of ghosts in this book, the ghost-like figure, you guys get one.
Thank you.
And I have one more. Anyone like it? How about the librarian?
Librarian, you never refuse mugs. What's that?
Okay, there you go. You're welcome. Yeah, the lady at my publisher designed it. And like I say, he's supposed to be holding hands with someone And the point of it is he holding hands with his former wife or Molly? And you have to decide that for yourself.
Oh, my.
But now you don't have to worry about it because you can't see it. I don't know if it came out on the cards or not. No, not really. Well,
with that, I'd like to close this out. Thank you so much for coming tonight to this third of our series of Author Time Talks with Mick Bennett over here. We're very happy to have you here, Mick, and glad that you overcame the cancer to bounce back and be here with us.
thank you.
Welcome back to Belmar. And we have more events coming up in the near future. I mentioned to a couple of those earlier. We have our Mr. Ray's concert for kids coming up on Saturday, October 18th, and we have the big Diwali Festival of Lights celebration at Taylor Pavilion at November 9th at 6 o'clock. We have an Indian dance coming, and the Bombay River Restaurant in Red Bank will be catering that event. So please join us for those days. Thank you for coming tonight, and have a great night.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, Bruce.